Guys, welcome back to chapter 16. We're going to talk about severe weather today. So a storm, the definition of a storm is just any violent disturbance up in the atmosphere. So remember, weather in general is just the condition in the atmosphere at a specific place and time. Well, if those conditions get to be, somewhat violent, then it's considered a storm. El Nino is kind of an unusual weather pattern. It involves warm weather patterns and warm water currents in the Pacific Ocean, and it can actually have an influence all over the country and cause a lot of storms. When we're in an El Nino year, we get all kinds of rain on the West Coast, but like I said, it can even have an impact over on the East Coast. So some of the weather we're going to talk about in this section is thunderstorms, tornadoes, hurricanes, and floods. Now, we kind of get thunderstorms here. We don't get tornadoes, although there have been some minor occasional ones on a very, very, very rare basis, but not like the kind that you see in the news. We don't get hurricanes on the West Coast, hardly ever. That's an East Coast thing. But sometimes we get floods. So a lot of this severe weather takes place in other locations than Southern California. That's why so many people like to live in Southern California. We do get earthquakes though. Anyway, let's talk about thunderstorms first. Okay. So the thunderstorms form in those cumulonimbus clouds. That's kind of the mix of the cumulus clouds and the nimbus clouds. And they're the big fluffy ones, but they get really tall and they contain a lot of moisture in there. Okay. The height of those clouds can produce what's known as updrafts, which is wind going up, and downdrafts, which is wind pointing down. Okay, so we can get hail in the thunderstorms, and it's because of those updrafts and downdrafts. So a little droplet of rain can start to fall, but the updraft blows it back up into the cloud where it's colder, and it can freeze, and then it falls, but then the updraft blows it up again, and more water freezes over it, starts to fall, updraft, and it can keep going on, and that's how you get these really big hailstones, okay? Well, that static, that friction that's happening between the water droplets, whether it's the cloud droplets or the raindrops, we get really big raindrops in thunderstorms that are bouncing up and down with those up and down drafts. There's a lot of friction, so that causes static electricity. So a lightning bolt is nothing more than a giant static spark. So like in the winters when you touch somebody and you feel that zap, or if you touch a light switch and you feel that little zap, that's what lightning is, just on a huge scale, okay? Now thunder is nothing more than the sound of lightning, okay? So what happens is lightning is so hot, and remember, hot things expand, hot air rises because it gets less dense, it spreads out. So the heat of the lightning causes the air around it to disappear. It expands so quickly it leaves, and what it leaves behind is known as a vacuum. And in science, a vacuum is like the absence of all particles. Well, that's not a naturally occurring thing, and nature doesn't like a vacuum. So once the heat of the lightning bolt strikes, the air just like takes off. It has to come back because, like I said, a vacuum can't really occur in nature for long. So it comes back very quickly, and the air particles, wham, slam together like that. And so the sound of thunder is nothing more than those air particles crashing together all at once and really loud. Crazy, right? So how to stay safe in a thunderstorm? Stay inside. It's the best thing. If you are stuck outside, though, you don't want to be the tallest thing around, but you don't want to hide under a tree. If the tree is the tallest thing, it'll probably get struck, and those trees can actually explode when they get struck. So if you do find yourself outside, you want to try to find like a low-lying ditch or something and just lay as flat as possible. But get inside if at all possible. Get out of the water. Water conducts electricity, and don't touch anything metal, okay? All right, tornadoes. The definition of a tornado is a swirling cloud that touches the ground. But it's swirling at a really, really high rate, okay? You can see these different miles per hour. The Fujita scale is a ranking system for tornadoes, and we start at an F0 all the way up to an F5. An F5 is 200 plus miles per hour. So these things can cause all kinds of damage, okay? They also form in cumulonimbus clouds, and people that live in tornado areas or weather people, they know how to watch the clouds, and they see certain warning signs for tornadoes, in addition to changes in pressure. Okay, stay safe. You should also stay inside. If you do live in what's known as Tornado Alley or the Midwest area where they get tornadoes, your house will probably have a basement. That's the best place to go, or in like a storm shelter. If you're in an area that is getting a tornado and you don't have a basement, you should go to the middle of the house on the ground floor and stay away from all the windows. Okay. So these tornadoes can do crazy things. I've heard stories of houses being picked up and dropped off, at different locations. Hay, like that animals eat. It can be blown so fast that it can actually like go into a tree. So if you take a piece of hay and you try to stab it into a tree on a normal basis, the hay is just going to bend. It's not going to happen. But because it's going so fast, it actually causes it to like enter into the branch of the tree. Wild stuff. All right, hurricanes. Also a predominantly East Coast thing. That is an actual picture of a hurricane there. Satellite image, and you can see that is Florida right there. So these do form in the Atlantic Ocean mostly, sometimes in the Gulf of Mexico, and they kind of come up from the south or in from the east. By definition, a hurricane is a tropical storm meaning it forms over the ocean, but it has winds that are higher than 74 miles per hour, okay, and they can reach up to 200 miles per hour like those tornadoes. They're huge. They could be about 373 miles wide, so it takes a long time for them to travel. They travel around 40 miles per hour, so it takes a few days for them to get over a location. Okay, the eye of the storm, that's this little thing right there in the middle, that is a center calm spot. So you've got all this storm on this side that would pass through. Then you get the eye and you're like, oh, thank goodness, a break. But then you've got all of this to pass over you as well, okay? So like I said, it takes a few days. So these hurricanes build over the ocean, and they're drawing up this warm, humid air above the ocean. So it contains a lot of moisture. Once they reach land, they're not being fed that water anymore, so they eventually just burn out, okay, because they run out of water. And I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but during a hurricane season, pay attention to the names of the hurricanes or the tropical storms. They're always named alphabetically, okay? One of the biggest problems of a hurricane that causes the most damage is something known as a storm surge. And because the hurricane is such a low pressure thing, it actually allows the ocean to rise. So, there's air above the ocean. If the air above the ocean is a really low pressure, it literally gives the ocean more room to spread out. Okay, and so this storm surge is a rise in the ocean level because of that low pressure. And what it causes is it causes the tide to come in really, really far, and it causes a lot of flooding. Okay. So for safety, seek high ground, get away from the coast, and if you are ordered to evacuate, make sure you do evacuate, all right? Floods. Floods occur near rivers or streams when they overflow due to just too much rainfall, but they can also occur in any location. You can get what's known as a flash flood. We talked about runoff before. As it's raining, that water is soaking into the ground, but if the ground gets saturated, or if it's raining too fast, that creates a whole bunch of runoff. And if you're in a location that, like a desert region or like these canyons that have a lot of rock, the water has nowhere to go, and so it collects and it causes this violent flow of water very suddenly and very soon after a storm. Okay, for safety, seek higher ground again, not the top of a car. Those people got caught in the flood because they weren't at higher ground. Might have been a flash flood. They might not have had time. I don't want to judge. Stay away from the floodwaters, okay? You see on the news, even in Southern California, kids think it's a real good idea to get into these storm channels, these storm drains, because it's like whitewater rafting, and I'm gonna take a raft down there. People die doing that all the time, so stay away from those storm channels. Do not go in it, okay? You've probably all been knocked over by a wave before at the beach, Water is heavy. Water is powerful. It only takes 2 feet of water and it can wash a car away. Imagine what it could do to you, okay? So high ground, stay out of it. Stay safe. Luckily, we don't have crazy weather out here too often. That's all for today. See you later.